Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem video. This is a postmortem of my Blitz chess game number 44, where I start out with d4 and my opponent played the Dutch defense, which is f5. And I mentioned this in the game. I played the most usual move, which is g3. It looks like c4 is another idea, setting up a typical queen's pawn opening. But there is a gambit here you can play, which is kind of interesting, and maybe I will do it sometime to demonstrate it. But what you can play is e4. So let's go ahead and take a look at it now. This was a short game, so we have time to digress a little bit. The way the Staunton gambit goes is you play e4, and you can take it. And then knight c3, attacking the pawn, very logical. And then knight f6, defending. And then bishop g5. And this is the way it goes. It looks like you've just given up a pawn for nothing, but there's this funny point that if he plays, for example, d5, that's not good. You can just take the knight, and then there's this check. And then when he blocks that, he can grab this pawn here. So, I mean, it's not like it's winning. You see white has the usual opening advantage here, maybe slightly greater than an opening advantage, but it gets your opponent out of book, kind of messes up his position a little bit. Of course, he doesn't have to try something like d5. I think knight c6, and then you can take the knight and get the pawn back if you want, or you can continue to play in gambit style. Anyway, that's just a different way to play the against the Dutch. And let's go back and take a look at how I played in the game. What I played was the most normal move, g3, most common move. You know, you're putting the brakes on this f5 expanse, and you're opening up this diagonal for the bishop. And the game continued along the typical lines, and then the move g6 was played, and this indicates what's called the Leningrad Dutch. The other way of playing is with, if we back up, instead of g6 you can play with e6 or even d6. But the g6 line is called the Leningrad Dutch. And I continue with the normal move, and then he plays unusual move, h6. So I think the idea with h6, if we take a look at it, and well, first let's show you that the normal continuation is just bishop g7 and castles. And the game goes on from here. Let's see if we take a look at a few more moves. Yeah, you get this kind of position, and so he can attempt to play e5 here and try and undermine the center. And I suppose you might consider developing your knight here and maybe even trying for e4 at some point. But anyway, it's a game. Let's go back to what we actually played. And after h6, we're pretty much out of opening books. So I'll just leave that turned off. I just wanted to show you a couple lines that would be more typical of the Dutch. This last line I showed you is probably more standard way to play, and then there's a Staunton gambit if you want something a little bit offbeat. I think the idea with h6 was to control this square, so the knight can't go there. The knight might have been threatening to hop into that square, but it didn't do anything about this square. So I think if you're going to play this h6 idea, you might want to play d6 first and then h6. It's just something for future reference. That would keep the knight out of this square. But after h6, I noticed that this square is weak. Yeah, let's erase some of those arrows. And so when the knight can hop into e5 here, hitting that g6 square. And the computer likes that idea. It's interesting that... he can move the pawn out of the way, or he can defend it with the rook, but neither one is particularly great for black. So already white has an opening advantage. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to say. When you see a move like h6, you know it's not the normal move in this position if you've played it a few times. And it's worthwhile spending a few minutes, depending on the time control of the game, thinking about, well, why is that not the normal move? What are the weaknesses? And sometimes, I've said this in other games, sometimes it's not the normal move just because it's like out of fashion. It's not played because nobody plays it, but and there's nothing wrong with it. But in this case, this move had a definite weakness, and so you'll often find that if you see a rare, unusual move, sometimes there is a flaw in it, and it's your job as a chess player to find that flaw and expose it. So knight e5 is the way to expose that flaw. You attack the weakened square, and even after he moves the pawn, the square left behind is still weak, and you can plop a knight in there. And this is attacking two pieces. I mean, it's not going to win a piece, it's just going to trade for the knight for either the rook or the bishop. But either way is pretty good. This bishop is a strong piece in this formation, and when you get rid of it, you've sort of invalidated a lot of black's opening play here. So these moves have become more or less a waste of time without the bishop here to take advantage of them. So the game goes on from here. He continues and tries to get some counterplay going. But really, he just got a bad position on the opening, and there's not a whole lot to be done about it. And you can see that the computer maintains an advantage for white. It's interesting that even though the material is exactly even, it gives white over a pawn advantage, which is pretty strong in a case when there's equal material. So this move, what did he play? He played bishop e6. It might not have been the best. The problem is he can't really stop this advance. I already have three pieces trained on that d5 square, and he has three defenders, and then the pawns. So I can push that pawn ahead safely, and I do. And now he's got to retreat the bishop. He had this idea. I guess the computer doesn't approve of it. I was wondering if he could play a move like queen a6 check. Queen a5. It's not a check. I'm sorry. Queen a5, pinning the knight. And the computer says, oh, I can just take the bishop. Okay. Is that right? I take the bishop. He takes the knight. Bishop d2. Attacks the queen and defends the rook. So I thought the queen was forking the king and the rook, but of course this bishop d2 move defends from the check and defends the rook at the same time. So okay, so queen a5 is just not good. So what he played, bishop d7, is probably as good as anything. But now, I've just got more space in the center. I go ahead and castle, knight a6, and here is finally, the computer picks up on this idea here too. I actually talked about this during the game. There are certain points where you want to take your time and try and find all the resources. There's a lot going on here, and I almost missed this idea. But the idea with d6 is not just to undermine... Oh, well, first of all, let me say d6 is a natural move because you want to bust up the pawns around your opponent's king who hasn't castled yet. You have an advantage in development. You want to open lines and get your attack on the king going. So d6 is a natural move, but he can just bypass it. But what d6 does, in addition, is open up the line for the bishop attacking this undefended pawn here. So it's a kind of double threat. And so this was a good thing that I discovered that it's the kind of thing you can overlook in a fast game. But, when you have the time, you want to stop and look for these opportunities. Make sure you understand all of the things that a move can do. So when he played e6, he's just giving up this pawn here. So that's... and when that pawn goes, it's a fork between the rook and the knight, so he's actually losing a piece at that point. So the way he could continue the game is to play something like rook c8. That's the favored computer line. And I could still go ahead and grab this with the fork, but he can take this knight and I can take that knight. So he escapes the fork that way by taking another piece. And I have my basic advantage that I had from before that transaction. But if we go back, he was concerned about opening up his king side here legitimately and just overlooked the fact that, overlooked the fact that the bishop was also attacking the b7 square and threatening this fork. So after e6, it's pretty much game over. I take the pawn, he develops his queen, I take the rook, and he resigns at this point. But it was a short game, but I thought it was interesting, particularly some ideas in the opening and also how you can evaluate your position and try and find the best moves. So hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any comments, leave them in the section below, and I'll see you again later. Bye.